Have you ever wondered how some films of the 70s just vanished from the spotlight? These weren't flops. They were daring, controversial, and sometimes too ahead of their time for Hollywood to handle. And yet, they've been buried collecting dust while safer films grabbed the headlines. Today, we're uncovering 5 forgotten 70s movies that deserve a resurrection. From a vampire story unlike any you've seen to a star studded satire that Hollywood didn't want you to take seriously. Stick around because the number one pick was so misunderstood that even critics couldn't decide if it was genius or madness. George Romero, the same mind behind The Night of the Living Dead, gave us a vampire story that broke every rule. Instead of capes and castles, Martin follows a troubled young man who may or may not be an actual vampire. The horror isn't supernatural, it's psychological, blurring the line between sickness and legend. Why is here? Because Romero used horror as a scalpel. It's raw, disturbing, and decades ahead of the vampire craze. Romero himself said this was his favorite film he ever made, despite being overshadowed by his zombie classics. Makes you wonder if vampires walked among us today, will they look like Dracula or like Martin? Before cop dramas flooded TV, there was this gritty ground level look at rookie officers in Los Angeles. Starring George C. Scott and a young Stacy Keach, this film shows the emotional toll of policing long before Hill Street Blues or Training Day. What sets it apart? It doesn't glorify the badge, it digs into burnout, moral compromise, and how the system breaks the very people sworn to protect. This screenplay was adapted from a novel, and the author himself was an LAPD officer. That's why it feels so authentic, almost documentary like at times. So here's the question: how did a film this influential slip out of pop culture memory? The shootout at the OK Corral has been told 100 times, but Doc flips the legend on its head. Here, Wyatt Earp isn't a hero. He's a manipulative opportunist, and Doc Holliday, played by Stace Kitch, becomes the tragic center of the story. Why he stands out? Because in an era still clinging to cowboy myths, this western dared to strip away the romance and show the brutality underneath. The film's revisionist take influenced the later anti-hero westerns, paving the way for films like Unforgiven decades later. Was Hollywood burying this one because it was too real for America at the time? This is Hollywood turned inside out. Set in the 1930s, it follows desperate dreamers chasing fame in Los Angeles and the rot beneath the glamour. Donald Sutherland, William Atherton, and Karen Black give haunting performances in a story that feels like the death of the American dream on film. Why it belongs here? Because few movies capture the cruelty of the industry with such biting surrealism. It's beautiful and grotesque at the same time. The chaotic ride scene at the end was so intense that it shocked audiences in 75 and still feels uncomfortably relevant today. Was this movie buried because Hollywood doesn't like mirrors that reflect its ugliest truths? With a title like that, you'd expect a comedy, and technically it is, but it's also one of the strangest, most daring films of the decade. Dustin Hoffman plays a successful songwriter, spiraling into paranoia as he is haunted by a mysterious figure is marrying his name. Is Harry Kellerman real or is all in his head? Why it's number one? Because it's both hilarious and unsettling, capturing the paranoia of fame and self destruction better than almost any film of its time. Hoffman himself admitted he didn't fully understand the movie, but he loved it for that reason. It's cinema that refuses to be boxed in, and maybe that's why Hollywood bury it. So here's the question. Do movies have to be understood to matter, or is the mystery part of their power? And those were 5/7 films that Hollywood bury, but that deserve to be unearthed and watched with fresh eyes. Which of these would you watch first? Drop your pick in the comments. I read them all. And your suggestions always lead me to hidden gems. If you enjoyed this list, hit like and subscribe. I bring you more forgotten treasures every week.